the bombs and the bullets of Israel don't distinguish between a Palestinian Muslim and a Palestinian Christian, between a church and a mosque, between the Christian village of Taipei or the communities in Masafir Yatta. Their fight is against the entire Palestinian people.
Telling you that there is no starvation in Gaza. There is a starvation campaign, a very successful one, by the way. With this campaign, that is the reason you don't have a ceasefire now. Because Hamas believes that because now they get the support of the international community, all of a sudden they don't need to negotiate with Israel.
The boy was clearly emaciated, Ambassador. Clearly emaciated. So yes, he has a medical condition, but also he's clearly not eating.
In today's video, we'll witness what's unfolding in Gaza through the words of the Deputy Permanent Observer of the State of Palestine to the United Nations and the Israeli Ambassador to the UN. You'll discover some shocking truths. And you'll also see how the Israeli ambassador, with full confidence, calls the reports of starvation and war crimes against civilians and children a smear campaign and lies. According to him, no one in the Israeli government ever spoke about displacing Palestinians. Most importantly, you'll see how he justifies all this killing by simply saying, as long as there are hostages, this war will continue. But the real shock is waiting for him, delivered by none other than Piers Morgan. Now, to be honest, this kind of behavior isn't new at all. They've always worn that smiling, whitewashed face with a dove of peace printed on it and presented it to the American, European, and global media, calling every Palestinian a terrorist and labeling anyone who challenges their lies as anti-Semitic. But what happened in Gaza tore that mask off forever. Today's video is intense, and it's just the beginning. It's a setup for the next one, which will be even more shocking. So I really hope you'll watch till the end. And before we begin, if you're someone who's looking for the truth, away from any biased media narrative, and you're into honest, logical, and different takes, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and let's dive in.
The United Kingdom will become the 149th country to recognise Palestine as a sovereign state of the United Nations in September. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer recalled his cabinet to discuss the unfolding disaster in Gaza, and he promised this.
I can confirm the UK will recognise the state of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution.
Well, those conditions may prove almost impossible for the current Israeli government to meet, and Keir Starmer knows that. Netanyahu doesn't want a two-state solution. Senior members of his government don't even want Palestinians in the West Bank. His response was to lash Starmer and the UK in an extraordinary rebuke for a close ally. Starmer rewards Hamas's monstrous terrorism, he said, and punishes its victims. A jihadist state on Israel's border today will threaten Britain tomorrow. Appeasement towards jihadist terrorists always fails. It will fail you too. It will not happen. Now, many supporters of Israel are criticising Starmer for imposing conditions on Israel and not Hamas, but giving conditions to Hamas in exchange for statehood would recognise Hamas as part of the future of Palestine. That would be a reward. The real criticism should be for imposing any conditions at all. The UK should recognise Palestine unconditionally, just as France will, simply because there is no two-state solution without a Palestinian state. It's also true that there's no two-state solution which includes Hamas, and there is no two-state solution that includes Netanyahu either. That's why this historic announcement is more about sending a message than anything else, and the message at least is very clear. It's time for the killing and suffering to end. It's time for dignity and peace for the Palestinian people, and it's time for Israel to listen to its friends. Well, the UK and France will both recognise Palestine as a sovereign state at the UN General Assembly in September. And we have two views from the heart of the UN in New York. Israeli Ambassador Danny Danon. First, I'm joined by Ambassador Majid Bamia, the UN Deputy Permanent Observer to the State of Palestine. Well, welcome to you, Deputy Permanent Observer. Can I ask you, first of all, your reaction to this announcement from the British Prime Minister that the UK will, from September, recognise the State of Palestine?
We believe this is long overdue. We think this is extremely important. If you believe in the right to self-determination, if you believe we are entitled as all nations to liberty and dignity, and if you believe in peace and the two-state solution, there's no justification not to recognize the state of Palestine, and we are seeing that many intend to do so in September.
The critics of it say it's a reward to Hamas, a reward for terrorists. What's your response to that?
Well, let's try this. Maybe it has something to do with our commitment to the peaceful path to liberation, including in the midst of genocide. Maybe it has something to do with our rights. Maybe it has something to do with the wanton destruction of Gaza and the killing of our people and Israel's position, extremist position against the Palestinian people's existence and against their right to statehood and destroying the two-state solution to which there is no alternative. And let's be honest, Israel is not proposing to have a one state with all having equal rights from the river to the sea. That's not their alternative to the Palestinian state. Their alternative is either to annihilate us, either to forcibly displace us, or either to subjugate us. So we have the choice. Do you want genocide, ethnic cleansing, or apartheid? And so the rightful thing to do is to say, no, the Palestinian people have a right to self-determination, and we have to recognize that state as part of preserving these rights and the two-state solution and the chances of peace for the Palestinian people, for the Israeli people, and for the entire region.
Do you accept that on October the 7th, that the scale of the terror attack by Hamas means that they, in that moment, abrogated any right to be part of any government at the end of this war in Gaza and the West Bank, for that matter?
I think we are past that conversation. There is a plan for the day after the end of the war, and it foresees an end to the rule of Hamas, Hamas handing over its weapons to the Palestinian Authority that has to resume its governmental functions and unify Gaza and reunify Gaza and the West Bank in the context of an independent and sovereign Palestinian state with also East Jerusalem as its capital. The fact that the war on the Palestinian people in Gaza is ongoing is delaying these solutions. The fact that Israel doesn't want a Palestinian Authority that is empowered, that it is doing everything to annihilate the forces of peace in Palestine, that it is willing to go on to avoid the prospect of a Palestinian state, is delaying all of this.
The permanent representative of Palestine to the United Nations presents some facts about the crimes committed by Israel in the Gaza Strip, and that the solution lies in guaranteeing the rights of the Palestinian people and implementing the two-state solution to ensure the rights of both Palestinians and Israelis, and to stop war crimes. He explains how Israel does not see this as a solution, nor does it accept the establishment of a sovereign Israeli state that guarantees equality for all. Instead, Israel's plan is either the displacement of Palestinians, ethnic cleansing, or apartheid. What Israel is doing now has gone far beyond the limits of self-defense and has entered the realm of war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and a policy of collective starvation. Moreover, Israel is deliberately working to delay the implementation of any solution that might stand in the way of executing its plans.
How can you give any guarantees that Hamas will accept any of this? I mean, if you're Hamas right now, you're seeing Israel becoming increasingly unpopular around the world for the scale of what they're doing in Gaza, for the death and suffering that they're causing. Many people now believe it's gone way past self-defense, that there is a clear plan articulated by the likes of Smotrich and Ben-Gvir in the Israeli government to cleanse the Gaza Strip from all Palestinians. So if you're Hamas, where is the incentive to bring this to an end if you know you're going to give up power?
So first, let me tell you, I had friends, diplomats, who came to me after the 7th of October and telling me, you understand Israel needs to respond. You understand what the Israeli people have endured. They need to restore deterrence. I haven't seen yet any diplomat that came to me before the 7th of October or now that Israel has killed the 60,000 Palestinians telling me, we understand you have to kill Israelis. We understand that you have to go to violence. They always call on us to be pacifists, to choose the non-violent way. And so you cannot demand Palestinian pacifism and justify Israeli militarism. And there's no right to self-defense and no right to resistance and no right whatsoever, whatever title and beautiful title you put on it, that justify the massacres of a people. And this was always about getting rid of the Palestinian people. And it was clear from day one in their statements, and now I think the whole world recognizes it for what it is, a plan to get rid of the people and to steal their land. Now there is an offer by Palestine, the region and the world to have this effort to a two-state solution, but that starts at the heart of it is Palestinian independence, is to stop the war on the Palestinian people in Gaza, but also the assault on the Palestinian people throughout the occupied territory. We had 1,000 Palestinians killed in the West Bank, including 200 children. We have 17,000 children killed in Gaza. All of Gaza has been destroyed. We have villages being burnt as we speak. We have settlers attacks. We have occupation forces attack. 40,000 displaced in the West Bank. And you know what was our response? The response of the Arab world, led by Saudi Arabia, who was co-chairing this conference? There is and we must end the cycle of violence. We must break it. And the only way to do that is not by continuing to deny Palestinian rights, it's by the fulfillment of Palestinian rights. Not by the destruction of the Palestinian state, but by its independence. And so you have forces for peace. And France, who also spoke of recognition first in the context of this conference as a co-chair of it, and now we see a movement, Britain is part of that movement, other countries as well. They have a vision of peace. We have a vision of peace. Israel doesn't. Israel wants to, even its closest allies, it's listening to no one. And so the guarantee is all of this, is the entire world ready to support the Palestinian Authority resuming its responsibilities with international support, with regional support. And if Israel accepts that Palestinian state, the two-state solution, fulfilling the rights of the Palestinian people, it has a path to regional integration. In the midst of a genocide, we're sending a message of peace. That was the point of the conference. And Israel wants to portray it as a message of destruction, of anti-Semitism, of negation. It is not. It's a Palestinian state living side by side with Israel in peace and security. And it is the Palestinian state and the Palestinian people who are enduring an existential threat.
Who do you see running Gaza at the end of this war? If it's not going to be Hamas, is your vision for this that it would be the Palestinian Authority, which might be very controversial with many Palestinians in Gaza who don't want that? Could it be another group that comes forward to govern in Gaza? What do you see happening?
What does it mean? You have a Palestinian government recognized across the world. And who tells you that the Palestinian people in Gaza, they want the end of this war? They are the ones who endure it in their flesh. You have mothers burying all of their children. You have people who have been tortured. You have people being starved by the millions. You have an entire classroom killed every single day. 10 Palestinian children losing 1 or 2 legs every single day. 25 Palestinian children losing 1 or both parents every single day. It's been 662 days. Those who absolutely want this war to end. And they know that part of it is also that reunification and that statehood that will make sure they never have to endure such hell again, and that protects them from all of this, are the Palestinian people in Gaza. That is not the concern. But I'm telling you that the only problem Israel has with the Palestinian Authority, and it knows that the Palestinian Authority will have the support of the region and the world. The conclusions of the conference call for an international stabilization mobilization in that context, with forces mandated by the Security Council upon the invitation of the Palestinian Authority, but to support our security forces, not instead of them, because that needs to be part of our statehood. So everybody is willing to contribute to that day after. But they have to accept that that day after is Palestinian independence. Israel is always explaining to the world, we are one war away from peace. They've been, Netanyahu, you can look at his speeches 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. He's always one war away from peace. And he thinks that by getting rid of the Palestinian people, that's the solution. The biggest rebuke came from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Saudi Arabia, who told them their only path to normalization and peace is Palestinian statehood and independence. And the whole world has rallied around this. All of these are their enemies now. The 190 countries who are meeting at the United Nations are the enemies of the people of Israel. They are the enemies of the government, the policies of the Israeli government, of annexation, annihilation, displacement. Nobody can stand for that. And honestly, they've been too patient with these practices, and it is time to hold Israel accountable for its actions.
But just to be clear, because I'm not sure you fully answered my question, do you believe the Palestinian Authority would govern after the war in Gaza? And would that necessitate an election in Gaza? Or how would you see this happening?
The Palestinian Authority has to resume as soon as possible. There are some transitional arrangements for 6 months under the umbrella of the Palestinian Authority and with a role for the Palestinian Authority. But and these arrangements, with the support of the mediators and the role of Egypt, and with the Qatar and the Arabs, and the mediation of the United States for a ceasefire, there is a push to have we have an Arab OIC plan, the entire Arab and Muslim world, to have a return of the Palestinian Authority under the policy of one state, one government, one gun. So we will be responsible for that. And there is a commitment by President Abbas in the letter to the co-chairs of the conference, Saudi Arabia and France, to hold elections within a year, and a call to help us ensure that we can hold it across the occupied territory, including in East Jerusalem. But that should not be a reason to delay ending the war, to delay our ability to go, and this is our duty, to help and serve our people after this terrible massacres and attacks by Israel that have destroyed everything. And Israel never has to pay to repair for it. The whole world has to do it for them. And even that, they are hampering. The world sends aid to our people instead of Israel abiding by its own obligation as occupying power, and it makes sure that it never gets to the people or shoots them while they're trying to get it. They want to portray this as a fight between civilization and barbarism. I saw what the message you showed from Netanyahu. This is the civilization, starving children, infants dying of hunger. That's civilization, bombing and obliterating everything. And so they want it to be between Muslims and Jews. But the bombs and the bullets of Israel don't distinguish between a Palestinian Muslim and a Palestinian Christian, between a church and a mosque, between the Christian village of Taipei or the communities in Masafer Yatta. Their fight is against the entire Palestinian people. So it's not a religious conflict. And we, in the movement in favor of Palestine, you have people from all lines of faith. And we don't accept that Jews are blamed for what Israel does. And we don't accept that Israel uses Jews or the Holocaust as a shield from accountability and criticism. It's an insult to the memory of the victims of the Holocaust, that instead of using the Holocaust as a reason to uphold international law, as a reason to salvage our common humanity, as a reason to end impunity, you use it as a justification for killing children, for atrocities, and for explaining why perpetrators should be shielded from any accountability. This has to end. This is destroying Gaza, but it's also destroying the region and the rest of the world. And that's why the world are coming together to save Gaza, save Palestine, but also because they want to save Israel from this madness, and they want to save the region. They want to unlock the potential. They don't want wars anymore. And the Israeli people, they will have to come out of that incitement against us, that these are the new Nazis, that there's a reason to kill children because they will come and kill you eventually, from all this narrative that the only way to be safe is to get rid of the Palestinians. And look around them. We are, as Palestinians, telling them, we are ready to have peace. The Arab and the Muslim world are telling them, you have a path to sustainable peace and acceptance in our region. But it will not be at the expense of the Palestinian people. It will not be at the expense of their right to freedom. Is it so hard to accept a Palestinian state and have peace in our region and unlock its potential? They have to choose between annexation and displacement and killing, and between a Palestinian state and the ability to live with shared peace, shared security, and shared prosperity. We are trying our best. It's not easy to say these things while people are being killed. It's not easy, and it may cause misunderstandings in our society. In Palestine today, and there's a lot of anger that can exist. But I'm telling you, the first ones who understand the importance of moving to peace are the people of Gaza. And we owe them peace. We owe them that our children are able to grow without being killed and murdered the way they are. Our children are not lesser children. When Netanyahu calls our children children of darkness, when he speaks of us as human animals, when is it enough? The world tolerated Israeli policies for 7 decades, from colonization to killing Palestinians to dispossessing us, from the Nakba till today. Gaza, that should be enough. 60,000 people, 2 million every day fighting for their lives. If that doesn't wake up the world, that Israel cannot have a right to life and death over every Palestinian any more and any longer, that this should have happened long ago. If we fail at this, if we fail the people of Gaza and the people of Palestine, if we fail the forces of peace in Palestine, Israel, and the region and the world, trust me, we will regret it. What we do next will determine the future of our region, maybe the future of the rest of the world. We cannot get it wrong. And everybody is conscious of that, except this Israeli government who doesn't care.
Here, the permanent representative of Palestine to the United Nations explains, when asked whether Hamas will rule Gaza after the war, and his answer was clearly no. He said that the Palestinian Authority, which is internationally recognized, will take the lead, and there will be international and regional support for it, and that all the countries of the world, 190 countries, support the two-state solution. So is the whole world against Israel? Of course not. But they are against the extremist governments that rule it and commit war crimes. And to end this, there must be a two-state solution. But he also pointed out something very essential. He told us that many diplomats came to him saying, you have to understand Israel's right to respond after October 7th. But now, after all the crimes committed by Israel, none of those diplomats came back to talk about the Palestinians' right to defend themselves, or even the right to resist. And aside from all that, I just want to tell you that Israel has been committing war crimes and apartheid, both in Gaza and in the West Bank, against children, civilians, and even at Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, against worshippers, constantly, for decades, even before October 7. And that shows us it's the right of Palestinians to resist and defend themselves. What I just told you are facts, and you can look them up online yourself. And that was very clear when the Palestinian ambassador to the UN told us that Israel has been saying for more than 20 years, we're just one war away from peace. But that peace never came. They're just fighting and implementing their plans without any accountability, with full international support since the creation of Israel. At first, I didn't understand what Hamas did, but now I can interpret it as a form of resistance, or an explosion that came after years of oppression against the Palestinian people. Even though I don't fully support Hamas, let's admit, what happened revealed so many truths about Israel that we didn't know, and they were deliberately hiding them from us. By the way, Hamas is just one of the resistance factions in Palestine, not the whole resistance. And that's something Piers Morgan himself will explain to you in this video. My final comment on this part is that the ambassador pointed out that Israel tries to present this conflict as a war between Israeli civilization and Palestinian barbarism. Meanwhile, Israel's so-called civilization is about killing children, starving Palestinians, ethnic cleansing, and expanding its land through occupation. This is clearly shown by what happened after the fall of the Syrian regime. They fully occupied the Golan Heights and Mount Hermon in Syria. And just a few months ago, they wanted to occupy southern Lebanon, all the way past the Litani River, under the excuse of Hezbollah. Man, they even occupied Egypt's Sinai after the creation of Israel. And back then, there was no Hamas, no Hezbollah, no threat at all. They also tried to make it seem like this is a war between Muslims and Jews, while in reality, Israel kills both Palestinian Christians and Muslims without any distinction, and that's a disaster. It shows us the real truth, that their problem is with the Palestinian people themselves. As the Israeli Prime Minister, who was elected by Israelis, said, Palestinian children are children of darkness and human animals. I think things are clear now. The mask has fallen. And in the next part, you'll see how the Israeli ambassador throws everything the Palestinian ambassador said out the window. You'll see him justifying everything Israel did, lying with full confidence, until Piers Morgan nearly lost his mind. Let's watch that dark and ironic part together.
Ambassador Bamia, I appreciate you coming on Uncensored. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Phil.
Well, joining me now to respond to that is Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon. Ambassador, thank you very much indeed for coming back on Uncensored. I just had a very passionate plea from Ambassador Bamia on behalf of the Palestinians at the UN to allow Palestinians ultimately to have the same human rights as Israelis and to have statehood that goes with that. What is intrinsically wrong with that? Why shouldn't they?
Well, you know, I'm familiar with the shows of Mr. Bamia. I'm seeing him at the UN almost every week. But let's talk about the facts. The facts are that, you know, we left Gaza 20 years ago, Piers, completely. We uprooted the settlement, so-called. We took out the military, even the cemeteries. And we told the people there, build your future. You know, the PA was in charge, and they had a chance to build a future. What happened? Hamas took over, and built a terror entity in our backyard. And we saw what happened on October 7th. So they shouldn't blame Israel for what happened. They have to realize that in order for them to have a better future, they have to face the radicals and to fight them. And they are not capable of doing it. Leave Gaza now. Let's speak about Judea and Samaria, where you have the Palestinian Authority in charge today. They are not capable of fighting terrorists. In cities like Jenin, Nablus, and even Ramallah, they have a lot of troops, a lot of funding, but they are not capable to stand up and push back against radicals. But when that day will come, that they will be able to fight radicals, they can speak about a better future. Until that day will happen, we will have to be there, neutralize the threat, exactly like what we are doing now in Gaza.
This is the first lie and the first distortion of the truth. Pause the screen and read this if you want. This is the truth. Israel completely withdrew from Gaza because it was a financial and military burden that could no longer be justified to the Israeli public at the time. It was also a strategic move by Ariel Sharon, because at that time, Palestine was very close to achieving a two-state solution through diplomatic efforts between Israel, Egypt, Jordan, the Palestinian Authority, and the United States. However, Sharon carried out a unilateral withdrawal in order to sabotage the diplomatic process with the Palestinian Authority and halt the creation of a Palestinian state. What I'm telling you is publicly available everywhere. This man is completely lying. He and his government, and the governments before him. This withdrawal was not out of mercy or a desire for peace. In addition, at that time, Israeli tanks were positioned right outside the office of Yasser Arafat, who was the head of the Palestinian government. I believe these people think we are like those who came before us, easily deceived. No, sir, we have read and we have seen. And wait to hear what Peres will say about Hamas in a moment. It will truly shock you.
But what many people say, including some of your closest allies in the world, is that you've gone way beyond any proportionate act of self-defense in Gaza, that you are now waging what many people believe is either a genocide or an ethnic cleansing. You now have openly members of the Israeli government, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir in particular, who are detailing in a gleeful manner their plan to take charge and control of the West Bank, of the Gaza Strip, to remove all Palestinians. This is ethnic cleansing they're talking about. It's not even ambiguous. They're not even trying to hide it. So what do you say to that, Ambassador?
You raised a lot of issues. Let me answer all of them. First, don't look at the words of ministers or members of Knesset. Look at the decision of the Israeli cabinet. That's how it works in our democracy. The cabinet decides about the goal of the operation, and the military moves forward or backward. That's regarding the statements. Second, regarding the claim for genocide, and ethnic cleansing, that's blah, blah, blah. Those are lies. These are a campaign of lies. I face it every day at the UN. Yesterday, you interviewed Mr. Tom Fletcher. He spread a lie that we killed 14,000 Palestinian babies out of nowhere. The agency, OCHA, that he heads, put a number of casualties of Palestinian civilians, and a day after, they put a different number and reduced it by 10,000 people. Not 100, not 1,000, 10,000. And look what happened with the New York Times, with the horrible campaign they had with this poor Palestinian boy who was sick, and they said he was starving to death. So there is a campaign of lies against Israel. But when you speak about proportionality, I have to ask you, what should we do to bring the hostages back? The reason we started this war because we were invaded and Israelis were kidnapped from their homes. We have a commitment to bring them back home. This war will not end with 50 hostages in Gaza. Even if the UN will vote about resolutions against Israel and more countries will say that they want to recognize a Palestinian state in the future, it will not change our determination to bring all of them back home to their families.
But this is the whole problem. Your strategy simply isn't working. The last hostage came back in February. Since then, you've launched a 3-month blockade of the Gaza Strip, which involved removing any ability to bring in food or aid or water, starving people in a way that is a war crime, by most people's understanding of that. You've now allowed a minimal amount of food to be going in after a huge international outcry. You say that one child the New York Times put on the front page wasn't starving. He clearly was starving. He just had other medical issues going on as well. And there are, we know from all the imagery, well, you can shake your head, but there are, as you know, many images coming out of Gaza.
Let's speak about the New York Times.
Well, hang on, let me finish. I'll let you finish. That there are many images coming out of Gaza of starving children. We're not making this up. And if you really believe it's not happening and all of this is a blood libel, then again, and I've had this conversation with you before, you should be pressurizing your prime minister to allow international media to go into Gaza to verify exactly what is happening. But, I want to play you a clip. This is from the BBC. Oh, hang on. I want to play you a clip from Jeremy Bowen.
You're spreading so many lies.
Hang on one second. Ambassador, with respect, I will let you respond. I will let you respond. But I will let you respond, but let me just play one clip to you of the BBC's Middle East editor, Jeremy Bowen, who's reported from every war zone in the last 25, 30 years. Here's what he reported for the BBC.
So the Jordanians have passed on a message from the Israelis. The Israelis don't want us to film out of the window at the devastation inside Gaza. But I spent 10 minutes looking at it with my own eyes. And I can tell you that communities in the north of Gaza that I knew well, very vibrant, tens of thousands of people living hard lives, but actually with a remarkable human spirit, are flat. There's nothing left of them.
Now, that's the truth, isn't it, Ambassador? You don't want journalists to go in there because what they're going to uncover and report to the world is utterly horrifying. You have destroyed 2/3, if not more now, of the Gaza Strip. You've displaced 2 million people into a very small area of the Strip. And you now have ministers who you say we shouldn't take seriously, but whose views are never publicly corrected or condemned by Prime Minister Netanyahu. So Smotrich and Ben-Gvir talk openly now about a plan to remove all Palestinians from the Gaza Strip and from the West Bank. And you simply say, as the ambassador, well, you shouldn't take them seriously. Why shouldn't we?
Yes,
why shouldn't we? I've not heard Netanyahu. Netanyahu doesn't say what they're saying is wrong.
Keep going. If that's an interview, keep going. For 6 minutes now.
No, now you can respond.
You're showing movies.
I'm not spreading lies.
Wait, if I would have to respond, each allegation, it would take us 15 minutes now. So when you say a lie,
tell me the lie.
You spoke about the New York Times picture. Let's speak about that for a minute. That was blood libel. When you put a picture of a sick Palestinian boy who has a disease and you claim that he was starving, that was a lie. And by the way, they retracted that. But the way they retracted it was also shameful. They put it in a small page on their Twitter with 89,000
But to be clear, I said that other children were starving. I said other children were starving. Do you deny that?
You said that this boy was also starving. You want to rewind it 2 minutes ago?
The boy is clearly.
He was also starving.
The boy is clearly. The boy was clearly emaciated, Ambassador. Clearly emaciated. So yes, he has a medical condition, but also he's clearly not eating, right?
No,
so
that's
why
not
deny
true.
what we see with our own eyes?
So look at his brother when you can see in the picture that his brother is well fed and he has no issues with the family. But this boy, because
this boy is not eating, right? So, fine. Is your position, to be clear, that are you saying no children are starving in Gaza? Is that your position?
I'm telling you that there is no starvation in Gaza. There is a starvation campaign, a very successful one, by the way. And this campaign is that.
Well, Donald Trump believes there's a starvation.
Wait, let me
Gaza.
finish. With all due respect, with this campaign, that is the reason you don't have a ceasefire now. Because Hamas believes that because now they get the support of the international community, all of a sudden they don't need to negotiate with Israel because aid is coming in. They can take over the aid again, and we can speak about what's happened with the UN not picking up the aid because of Hamas. They will not tell you that, but you have aid inside Gaza that the UN is not capable of distributing it. But it's easier to blame Israel. So for Hamas now, they make a mistake. They think they shouldn't negotiate with us. But I tell you that we will not stop this war with the hostages in Gaza, regardless of what you're going to say, regardless of the blood libel we saw at the New York Times and other media outlets. We know it's a campaign. But this campaign will not change our determination to bring them home. We will not leave them in the tunnels, regardless of all those lies and all those declarations.
The Israeli ambassador wanted us to not believe what we see with our own eyes. Please understand what I'm saying. We are not children. We have mature minds. Of course, we all want the hostages to return, even if, in reality, 90% of them are soldiers, and we want safety for everyone. But this is not logical. First, he says the press is misreporting the number of children killed. Really? That's your issue? How many civilians have you killed? Man, you've killed 60,000 civilians and are starving 2 million people right now, with confirmed deaths due to hunger, all for around 250 people held by Hamas, many of whom were returned in previous negotiations that your government chose not to continue. And now you use that as a justification. That's ridiculous. You didn't dodge the question. You just don't respect our intelligence. You could have protected civilians if you truly intended not to harm them. You could have offered them shelter in the Negev desert, which you control, until the hostages were returned. But instead, you chose to destroy their homes, hospitals, and aid centers. Go on, Mr. Ambassador.
Do you accept that if there is an attempt to move the Palestinian population out of Gaza completely, that that would represent ethnic cleansing and a war crime? Do you accept that in principle?
Absolutely not. You know, I think President Trump put it forward, and he said that it should require consent. If somebody in Gaza wants to move now to a different place, he should be allowed to do it. Nobody should force him. But if he wants to move out...
And what if they don't want to? What if it's involuntary?
If you want to move now from London to New York, or from New York to London, you can do that. You can apply for a student visa.
I'm asking about if it's involuntary.
No,
what if it's involuntary?
No, absolutely not. I'm talking about consent from both sides. Consent
right,
of the
but if there's no
individual
consent, do you accept if there is no consent from the Palestinian people to be moved, displaced out of Gaza?
Absolutely.
Let me finish my question. Ambassador, let me ask you a precise question so the viewers can understand. If it is done without their consent, in other words, they are forcefully displaced out of Gaza, out of the West Bank, would you accept that is ethnic cleansing and a war crime if that is what happens?
No one is speaking about that. That is something which is not acceptable.
They are. Smotrich and Ben-Gvir are literally talking about that.
No one
They're
is speaking about...
two senior members of your government.
No one is speaking about...
They are literally speaking about it, Ambassador. With respect, they are literally... that is what they're speaking about.
I'm a representative of the Israeli government, and I'm telling you, and you can look at the protocols of all the debates in the government and the cabinet. It was never discussed. It's not on the table. And also President Trump's vision was about offering a possibility for people to relocate. It happened in Ukraine. It happened in different areas in the world when people wanted to move to a different place. If they want to do it, and by the way, they can come back afterward if they want to. But why only the people in Gaza are not being allowed to even think about a future in a different place? Why, if they want to live in one of the Arab countries, or if they want to come to the US or to Europe, why not even giving them the option to discuss it? Why you say, no, you have to stay there for eternity, when all other citizens of the world are allowed to think about a future in a different place?
Okay, well, why don't Israelis move out of Israel then and let the Gazans go and live there?
Well, Israelis, if they want to move, they can move. And the people of Gaza, if they want to find a different future, they should be allowed to do that. But I think you touched a point. I think some people in Gaza, the radicals, they don't want a better future. They don't care about the future of their children. They care about eliminating Israel. And that is the core of the problem. It's not about where they live and how they live. It's about, the fact that some elements in Gaza, the radicals one, don't want to see the existence of Israel, period. Read the constitution of Hamas. Read what the muwakama, the resistance for the jihadic means. That's the essence of their existence. And even today, when there are negotiations offering them to go to exile, to live a very good life in different countries in the Middle East, you know what they say? We don't want to live in a different place. We want to stay in Gaza and to fight the jihad against Israel. That is the main problem. If you look to what happened in the last 20 years, how many billions of dollars were invested in Gaza by the UN, by the US, by the EU, and that money wasn't used to build a better society, a better future. It was used to build hate and weapons of mass destruction against Israel.
You know, the biggest problem, it seems to me, Thomas Friedman, the New York Times columnist, wrote a great column today in which he said the reality of what is happening now in this war is that you have the worst Palestinian leadership ever with Hamas, and you have the worst, most far right-wing Israeli government ever as well. In other words, you have the worst of the worst leading both sides in this war, both of whom now appear increasingly wedded to the destruction of the other. And the victims in all this are the Israeli citizens and the Palestinian citizens who are not members of Hamas, or the Israelis who are not signed up to this worldview expressed by Gvir and Smotrich of getting rid of all Palestinians. That is not what most Israelis actually want, I don't believe. Maybe they do. I don't believe they want a form of ethnic cleansing. What they want is to try and get a solution and peace, but there is no will for peace. There's no will on the Israeli government side to bring this to an end. Because the moment it ends, Netanyahu gets held accountable for what happened on October the 7th, and he has to be back in a criminal court facing corruption charges. He has no incentive to end it. Hamas have no incentive to end it either. They just want to keep killing as many Jews as they can possibly kill. I don't make any pretense that that's what they want to do. But you have the worst of the worst leaders on both sides now in an implacable war which shows no sign of ending, and neither side wants it to end. And that is the absolute tragedy about what is happening now in Gaza.
Piers, it's a shameful comparison. You know, how dare Thomas Friedman equate the Prime Minister of Israel, who was elected by the people of Israel, to the Hamas regime. You know, we have a democracy. We have elections. Prime Minister Netanyahu was elected. Hamas took over control over Gaza, and there was no elections there, and they actually shoot the opposition there. So to make that comparison, it's shameful. It's shameful, and you know that, you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and you can say a lot of things about him, but he always tried to delay conflicts and to avoid wars. But this war was brought upon us, and he had no choice to defend Israel and to fight to bring the hostages back. That is his responsibility. He was elected to protect the people of Israel. If somebody comes and kidnaps innocent Israelis, we expect the leader of the country to bring them back. That is duty. And that's what he's doing now, representing the people of Israel. So I think any comparison between Netanyahu and Hamas is not acceptable.
I want you to research everything I've told you so you can be 100% sure of the information. Once again, we're faced with a series of lies. First, about the idea of forced displacement of Palestinians. We all saw the statements from the Israeli government and its officials, and even Donald Trump with Netanyahu, when they said, "We want to turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East." They've tried so many times, but they couldn't pull it off, thanks to Egypt's stance, the Arab countries, and others around the world who pushed back. And don't forget, collective starvation policies are enough to force people to flee anywhere just to survive. The second lie, he says if a Palestinian wants to live in another country, they can return later. That's a complete lie. Dear viewer, all Palestinians who were expelled since the creation of Israel are banned from ever returning to Palestine. It's a known tradition that they pass down the keys to their old homes to their children as a symbol that they'll return one day. I'm listening to this man, and honestly, I feel absolutely disgusted by him and all his lies. I was especially shocked when he said, "They have weapons of mass destruction." Excuse me. Were you about to say Saddam Hussein is their leader and he's still alive? Come on, enough lies. You were the ones who supported Hamas after the 2005 withdrawal to destroy the idea of a Palestinian state. You funded them to challenge the other resistance factions and the Palestinian Authority. And that's exactly what Piers Morgan is about to say to him about Hamas. You hold all the strings in the game. The deeper we go into this, the more it starts to feel like we're uncovering terrifying truths. And after all these lies, the only thing I try not to believe until the very end is that October 7th might have actually been your own plan, coordinated with Hamas, just to take over Gaza. This idea is widely believed across the Arab world. Talk to anyone there, and they'll probably tell you the same. That may have been the plan all along, but even if it was true, it backfired. Now you might ask, wait, Earlier, you said October 7th might have been an explosion after years of oppression. And the answer is simple. Any group, any movement, party, or even country is made up of two kinds of people. The leaders, who know the full plan, and the foot soldiers, who are recruited using truths like, we're being oppressed, we have the right to defend ourselves, or even through twisted lies or misinterpreted facts. We've seen this with all kinds of extremist groups, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, or others. They usually target people who lack deep knowledge of the topic, making it easy to recruit and mislead them. Take ISIS, for example. The majority weren't even Arabs or Arabic speakers, which made it easier to twist religion and facts for them. So in the end, the real deciding factor is the conscience of the leaders, whether they lead a movement, a resistance, a political party, or even a country. And that's how we, the people, analyze their motives, by watching their actions and the real-life outcomes of everything they do. Dear viewer, you must truly understand this. In the world of conflicts, not everything we see is as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. There are many things we witness that are deeply complex and driven by extremely sinister agendas. And to put an end to all this chaos, to move away from endless speculation and conspiracies, and to protect the rights of civilians and children, an independent Palestinian state with full sovereignty must be established. This is the only way to stop the ongoing suffering of the Palestinian people.
Well, let's remind people that Benjamin Netanyahu actively supported funding Hamas to the tune of billions of dollars. He wanted to create a divide and rule with the Palestinian Authority. He thought that would make Israel more secure. In fact, it had the opposite effect. It's made Israel far less secure, as has this relentless bombardment and destruction of Gaza, the killing of more than 60,000 Palestinians, 20,000 plus children. None of this has made Israel safer. It's made it more dangerous to be an Israeli. It's made it more dangerous to be a Jew living around the world. And as somebody who has always supported Israel and has many Israeli and Jewish friends, I speak as a friend when I say, end this madness. This is completely insane. The rest of the world is now looking at Israel utterly aghast, even your closest allies, even your friends, even your supporters. And they're saying, when is enough enough? This has to stop. And I just don't understand why, and I've interviewed you many times. I've always found you a very respectful person to interview, and I appreciate you coming back on. But I cannot believe that you don't wake up in the morning now and see the clarity of how incredibly unpopular this war strategy is now making Israel, and that also it's not achieving its aims. You're not getting the hostages released. You're not beating Hamas because they're still operating and holding you to ransom with the hostages. None of this is working. All you're doing is apparently doing exactly what Smotrich and Ben-Gvir have articulated is the real plan, which is getting the Palestinians out of Gaza. And if you do that, then Israel will be hated for the rest of my life. And that's just a reality. And I don't get it. I don't know why the sensible Israelis are not speaking up and saying, enough of this. We're not being held ransom by this hard right government anymore, doing this crap in our names.
Well, on October 7th, Piers, I was in Israel. I was a member of the coalition of the government of Netanyahu. And I can tell you that if we wanted to evacuate the people of Gaza, we would have done it by now. Believe me, we had the capabilities. It wasn't the decision of the government. And you looked at the way we operated in Gaza, when 900 Israeli soldiers died during the operation, is because we have to maneuver in a very careful manner in order to minimize civilian casualties. That's why this war is so difficult for us, and it's so long. It's the longest war in our history, and the price is a heavy price. But I have to tell you one thing. Today, there's a different situation. You know, despite everything you said, that, you know, we are being condemned, but I think the threat of Hamas today is not the same threat we had on October 7th. The threat of Hezbollah is not the same, and the threat of Iran is not the same. So yes, we change things, but we have to finish the job. And finishing the job is the day when the hostages will be back home. We have to realize that. You know, how can you explain to the families of those people after 2 years that we concluded the military operation and we left the hostages behind? I cannot explain that. No one can explain that.
Ambassador Dunham, like I say, I appreciate you coming back on Uncensored. You come on regularly. I do appreciate that and hearing your perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Dear viewer, if you've made it with me to this moment, then you've seen this man from start to finish, spreading lies and twisting the facts. Yes, maybe you can evacuate them, and you do have the tools. But the truth is, you're using those tools by starving them. We've seen Netanyahu with Donald Trump, and Donald saying that the Palestinians should be displaced and Gaza should be turned into the Riviera of the Middle East. We've seen many statements like this, but you weren't allowed to do it. You can't evacuate them to Sinai because Egypt is standing in your way. They know you very well. You can't displace them to Jordan. In fact, any Arab country that does that would be seen by the people of the rest of the Arab world as a traitor forever, because simply that would mean ending the Palestinian people's right to their land once and for all. That's the core of the issue for Arab people in the region, and that's how they see it. But I respect their perspective because this is their cause. As for how you can justify things to the families of the hostages, you can say, I took the lives of 2,000 people or more and killed them in exchange for each Israeli hostage. Or maybe you're waiting to finish off the remaining 2 million people so you can justify it in the end. Enough nonsense. You've crossed every line of self-defense. You halted negotiations many times and used the hostages as a political card. In the end, I hope this conflict ends, that the hostages return to their families, and that a fully independent Palestinian state is established for the Palestinian people. Finally, I'm truly happy and proud that I created this video, which I believe will be a special one, because I showed nothing but the truth, without exaggeration. And I hope I was able to explain and reveal some facts to you clearly and simply, even if they were a bit shocking. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And in the next video, what I'll show you will be even more shocking than this. So get ready, and I hope you help this video reach 100,000 likes, and I kindly ask all of you to help my channel grow rapidly by clicking the subscribe button below the video. See you.